In an astonishing turn of events that would go down in academic history as one of the greatest spectacles ever witnessed, the brilliant Barron Trump arrived at Winslow Academy, a hallowed institution known for cultivating the best and brightest minds, with an aura of quiet confidence that defied every expectation. From the very first moment, whispers of an amazing encounter between this extraordinary young prodigy and a notoriously arrogant professor began to ripple through the corridors, igniting a spark of intrigue and curiosity among everyone present. Winslow Academy was no ordinary school. It was a prestigious arena where children of influential families, political dynasties, and business magnates honed their skills. Beneath its immaculate facade, however, lay an environment where intellect was both a weapon and a battleground. It was here that Professor Robert Kingsley, a man revered for his deep knowledge of mathematics and celebrated for his uncompromising teaching methods, had long ruled the classroom with an iron fist. His reputation for strictness and a superiority complex was legendary, and he had never once imagined that a single student could ever challenge his dominance. On that fateful day, as the sun cast determined beams through the large windows of a bright and spacious classroom, an almost tangible tension began to build. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, as every student sensed that something extraordinary was about to unfold. In stepped Barron Trump, whose unassuming presence and sharp intellect were instantly at odds with the ostentatious arrogance that filled the room, a presence that was destined to disrupt the carefully maintained order of Kingsley's domain. Professor Kingsley had a long-held belief no student could ever outshine him. To him, his classroom was not a place for learning through collaboration and genuine inquiry. Rather, it was a stage where his own brilliance was meant to be admired, and every other mind was destined to submit to his authority. When his eyes fell upon the name Barron Trump on the roster, a flicker of disdain and disbelief sparked within him. In his mind, Barron was merely another pampered, entitled youth, a product of wealth and privilege, unworthy of true academic merit. With a heavy heart full of unyielding pride and arrogance, Kingsley resolved to prove that any brilliance attributed to the new student was nothing more than a myth. From the moment the class gathered, a palpable energy filled the room, a mix of admiration, skepticism, and raw anticipation. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation, a clash of wits between an indomitable mind and a professor whose identity was built on the very notion of unquestioned superiority. Without a hint of ceremony, the professor strode to the front of the class, his presence alone demanding attention. With deliberate precision, he declared the arrival of a new student, casting a scrutinizing gaze upon Barron Trump that was both challenge and provocation. The professor's plan was ingenious in its cruelty. He aimed to not only test Barron's academic prowess, but also to shatter his confidence publicly, turning the young student into an example of failure in front of his peers. The challenge was set in stone, a series of increasingly complex tests designed to force Barron into a corner, to expose his perceived inadequacies, and to reaffirm Kingsley's unassailable position as the unrivaled master of the classroom. The professor's method was simple, yet vicious. Push the student into the spotlight, make him falter, and in doing so, prove once and for all that even the most seemingly gifted could be subdued under the weight of pressure and expectation. Yet what the professor failed to foresee was that Barron Trump was not like the others who had come before him. There was a quiet intensity in his demeanor, a strength that emanated not from arrogance, but from an unshakable belief in his own abilities. While others might have trembled at the prospect of facing such an overwhelming challenge, Barron embraced it with calm resolve. His approach was methodical, almost poetic, as if every complex equation or logical puzzle was but a conversation waiting to be had with the very fabric of mathematics itself. As the first test was unveiled, a daunting equation sprawling across the blackboard with an intricate web of numbers and symbols, an eerie silence befell the room. The professor, convinced that this challenge would be Barron's undoing, watched with a mix of smug satisfaction and barely concealed apprehension. The very air seemed to thicken with the weight of expectation, every student holding their breath as they waited to see if the prodigy would stumble under the pressure. In that charged moment, Barron's eyes locked onto the labyrinth of mathematical symbols, and something extraordinary happened. With a deliberate calm that belied the intensity of the situation, he began to write. His movements were precise, his focus absolute, as he dissected the problem with a technique so innovative that it rendered the professor's own methods obsolete. Each stroke of the chalk was a testament to his innate understanding, and within minutes he stood before the class, not as a defiant challenger, but as a master of his craft. The impact of that moment was seismic. What began as a simple academic exercise had evolved into a battle of wits, a demonstration of how raw intellect and unyielding perseverance could defy the rigid structures of authority. The classroom, once a stage for the professor's domineering presence, had transformed into an arena where true merit began to shine through, challenging the very notion that greatness could be measured by one's background or privilege. The reverberations of that first confrontation echoed far beyond the confines of the classroom. It was not merely a test of mathematical ability, it was an emotional and psychological showdown that questioned the very foundations of authority and merit. For many, it was the moment when the realization dawned that brilliance could not be confined to the boundaries of a prestigious name or an inherited legacy. Barron Trump, with his quiet determination and effortless skill, had planted the seed of change in an environment long dominated by pride and prejudice. In that first part of the journey, as the sun dipped lower and the shadows danced across the polished floors of Winslow Academy, a subtle yet profound transformation was set in motion. The arrogant veneer of Professor Kingsley began to crack, and the silent promise of revolution, one based on intelligence, creativity, and the unyielding power of the human mind, took root. The battle lines had been drawn, and with each passing moment, it became increasingly clear that this was not simply a test of arithmetic or logic, but a contest for the very soul of an institution. Thus began the legend of Barron Trump at Winslow Academy, a legend defined not by the weight of a famous name, but by the undeniable truth that talent, when nurtured and unleashed, has the power to challenge even the most formidable of adversaries. What lay ahead was a series of tests and trials that would push both the prodigy and his arrogant mentor to the limits of their endurance, setting the stage for a confrontation that promised to redefine the boundaries of excellence and authority forever. The classroom's atmosphere had shifted in the wake of Barron Trump's extraordinary display. What was once a stage for the professor's domineering pride had transformed into a battleground where intellect reigned supreme. Yet Professor Kingsley was not a man to accept defeat easily. Determined to restore his crumbling authority, he unveiled a new gauntlet of challenges, a series of tests designed not only to measure mathematical prowess, but also to probe the very essence of creativity and resilience. With a deliberate pause that sent ripples of suspense through the room, Kingsley stepped back to reveal a fresh set of problems. This time, the tasks were not confined to the realm of conventional arithmetic. They were intricate logic puzzles, brain-teasing conundrums that demanded both critical thinking and an unorthodox approach. His voice, though measured and cool, carried an unmistakable note of challenge as he declared, "If your brilliance is as profound as you claim, then prove it. Complete these tests without falter, and I will acknowledge your excellence publicly. Fail, and you will stand before your peers and apologize for daring to shine." A murmur of excitement mixed with apprehension spread among the students. Many had come to regard Barron's quiet defiance as a beacon of hope, a signal that perhaps the rigid hierarchies of academic power were not as absolute as they once seemed. Others, steeped in tradition and conditioned by years of deference to authority, watched with a blend of skepticism and awe, wondering if this bold new student could indeed upend the established order. Barron, however, remained unshaken. His expression was one of serene determination, as if every challenge posed was merely another step on a path he had already charted in his mind. As he accepted the first test, a complex puzzle laid out on a crisp sheet of paper, his eyes scanned the intricate sequence of numbers and symbols. To everyone's astonishment, his face remained calm and resolute. With a measured nod, he stepped forward to the board, his movements fluid and deliberate. In a performance that defied the professor's expectations, Barron began rewriting the puzzle onto the board. Every stroke of chalk was imbued with an elegance and efficiency that captivated the room. Where others might have hesitated or faltered under the pressure, Barron's method was swift and assured. His strategy was not merely to solve the problem, but to do so in a way that revealed a deeper understanding, a novel method that bypassed the rote procedures Kingsley had so carefully championed. Within moments, the solution emerged, displayed in a format that was as efficient as it was revolutionary. A hushed awe fell over the class as eyes darted between the solution and Barron's composed face. The silent admiration was palpable. Even those who had doubted him were forced to recognize the brilliance before them, yet as the echoes of whispered exclamations filled the room, Professor Kingsley's face remained an impassive mask, though his eyes betrayed a fleeting spark of uncertainty. Regaining control of the narrative, Kingsley dismissed the initial display as an isolated success and announced a series of further challenges. Each test was designed to push not only Barron's intellectual limits, but also his capacity to articulate his thought process under immense scrutiny. Mathematics, he intoned, is not solely about arriving at the correct answer. It is about the journey, the discipline, and the mental fortitude to persevere under pressure. His words, heavy with the implication of an unyielding contest, resonated through the room, transforming the academic exercise into an epic duel of minds. As the next challenge was unveiled, a puzzle that required inventive logic and rapid adaptation, the tension in the room grew even thicker. Every student leaned forward, eyes locked on Barron, whose calm gaze belied the intensity of the task at hand. There was no trace of arrogance in his demeanor, only a quiet, unassailable confidence born from genuine mastery of his craft. He methodically copied the sequence onto the board and, after a brief moment of contemplation, began to unravel the complex layers of the problem. Time seemed to slow as each chalkstroke carved out the solution, revealing not only the answer but also an entirely new approach to solving such puzzles. The efficiency and clarity of Barron's method left no doubt. He was not merely repeating what was expected, but was in fact rewriting the rules of the game. His demonstration was a masterclass in logic, a silent manifesto declaring that true brilliance could not be contained by tradition or constrained by established methods. The class was spellbound. Even those who had once marveled at Kingsley's reputed expertise could no longer ignore the emerging truth. The intellectual landscape of Winslow Academy was shifting. In that moment, Barron was not just a student, he was a revolutionary force challenging the very foundation of academic authority. His every action exuded a refined blend of humility and prowess, a testament to the idea that real genius speaks through actions rather than mere words. Professor Kingsley, despite his attempts to mask his mounting disquiet, could not completely hide the impact of Barron's performance. The challenge had taken on a life of its own, morphing from a simple academic exercise into a defining battle between tradition and innovation. The room was no longer a mere classroom, but a microcosm of a larger, more profound struggle. A confrontation between the unyielding rigidity of inherited authority and the transformative power of true talent. In that charged atmosphere, Barron's resolve only deepened. With each test he conquered, he not only dismantled the professor's carefully constructed barriers, but also sowed the seeds of change among his peers. The once unassailable walls of Kingsley's authority were crumbling, replaced by a burgeoning belief that merit, not pedigree, was the true measure of worth. The gauntlet of challenges had become a crucible in which both teacher and student were being reshaped. A powerful reminder that even the mightiest of institutions must sometimes yield to the force of undeniable brilliance. As the final echoes of chalk against the board faded into a silence laden with new possibilities, the duel of intellect continued to unfold. The students sat, transfixed, as the battle between innovation and tradition raged on, setting the stage for an academic revolution that would be remembered for generations to come. As the echoes of the previous challenges slowly faded into memory, the atmosphere in the classroom transformed into a crucible of raw emotion and intellectual bravery. Professor Kingsley, his once unshakable arrogance, now threatened by the undeniable brilliance of Barron Trump, realized that brute mathematical prowess alone would not restore his fading authority. Determined to reassert control, he shifted tactics, this time preparing a challenge that was as much a test of emotional fortitude and psychological composure as it was of academic skill. In a tone that dripped with a mix of disdain and reluctant admiration, Kingsley announced his next test. "Intellect without resolve is like a ship adrift on a stormy sea," he declared, his voice echoing off the walls as if to command attention beyond the realm of mere numbers. "Barron, today you will confront a problem that cannot be solved by logic alone, a riddle that digs deep into the very nature of identity and worth." His words carried an undercurrent of personal challenge, as if this test was designed not only to measure Barron's ability to solve puzzles, but also to force him to face the very core of who he was. The classroom fell into a heavy silence. The air itself seemed to pause in anticipation. Here was a moment when the battleground was no longer defined by chalk dust and equations, but by the inner workings of a young mind poised against the towering legacy of a man who had ruled this space for too long. Students who had until now been mere spectators to an academic duel leaned forward, their eyes reflecting both curiosity and trepidation. Barron, ever the epitome of calm in the storm of challenges, met the professor's gaze with a steady, unwavering look. He understood that this test was not just about finding the correct answer. It was about affirming that his worth was not determined by a prestigious name or inherited privilege, but by the strength of his character and the clarity of his mind. As Kingsley presented a single, elegantly inscribed riddle on the board, a question woven with layers of metaphor and challenge, every heart in the room began to race. The riddle was deceptively simple in appearance, yet laden with complexity. It questioned the essence of merit, the true nature of success, and the price of conformity. As Barron's eyes scanned the carefully chosen words, he felt the weight of the challenge press upon him. This was no longer a test of arithmetic precision or logical sequences. It was a confrontation with the very ideals that had defined the academy and, indeed, society at large. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. With every heartbeat, the tension mounted, drawing each student closer into the vortex of this intellectual and emotional trial. Barron stepped forward, his movements measured and his expression composed. The silence of the room deepened into something almost tangible, a shared breath held in unison by everyone present. In that charged moment, Barron began to write. His chalk danced across the board, not with the hurried urgency of someone under duress, but with a deliberate grace that revealed the intricate process of his inner dialogue. His solution was not merely an answer, it was a narrative, a thoughtful exposition of how identity, merit, and personal conviction interweave to create something truly unassailable. Every line he wrote was imbued with a quiet strength, a declaration that his abilities and his worth were his own to define. As Barron completed his response, he stepped back, his gaze locking with Kingsley's. For a long, heavy moment, the only sound was the collective inhale of a captivated audience. Then in a voice that was both gentle and resolute, Barron spoke, not as a challenger seeking validation, but as a young mind asserting its intrinsic value. True merit is not a birthright bestowed by a name, nor is it measured solely by the challenges one overcomes. It is the quiet courage to be oneself under pressure, the unyielding commitment to truth even when that truth is hard to face. In a world that values conformity over curiosity, I choose to define my own path. A ripple of stunned silence surged through the room. Even Professor Kingsley, whose face had once been an impenetrable mask of superiority, faltered for a moment. The test had transcended the boundaries of academic competition and touched upon something profoundly human, a reminder that intellect, when paired with integrity and courage, can reshape even the most rigid institutions. In that powerful moment, the balance of power began to shift more irrevocably. The professor's carefully constructed world of dominance was beginning to crumble, replaced by a new reality where the worth of an individual was measured by their inner strength and the authenticity of their ideas. The students, witnessing this quiet revolution, found themselves questioning long-held beliefs about authority and success. And so, as the final chalk dust settled on the board, the challenge was no longer just a test, it was a turning point. The duel of intellect had evolved into a transformative encounter, one that promised to leave a lasting mark on everyone present. In this silent, charged exchange, Barron Trump had not only answered a riddle, he had redefined what it meant to be truly exceptional. In the wake of Barron's moving declaration, the classroom, once a sterile arena for tests and calculations, transformed into a theater of raw emotion and subtle revolution. The unyielding control of Professor Kingsley, whose reputation for unchallenged authority had begun to crack, now stood at a crossroads. With each successive challenge, it became increasingly clear that this was no longer a contest of numbers alone. It was a battle for the soul of the academy itself. Professor Kingsley, determined to reassert his dominance, unveiled his next challenge with a calculated calm that belied the storm raging within him. This time he shifted from abstract puzzles to a series of multifaceted problems designed to test not only intellectual acumen, but also the resilience of one's convictions. His words, measured and precise, carried a hint of desperation as he addressed the class. If you believe your methods and your ideas can rival tradition, then prove it. I have prepared a set of tasks that require not just calculation, but an articulation of your thought process, a demonstration of why your reasoning is superior. The challenge was more complex than any that had come before. It required an intricate balance of creative insight and logical rigor, a blend of problem solving that went beyond the routine. The board soon filled with a mosaic of puzzles, sequences that intertwined logic and lateral thinking, equations that hinted at hidden patterns, and diagrams that demanded an explanation of the underlying principles. Barron stepped forward once more, his presence calm and assured. With a quiet confidence, he began to work through the tasks, his chalk gliding over the board as if guided by an inner rhythm. Every stroke was deliberate, each solution a blend of ingenuity and clarity. His methods, while unorthodox, demonstrated a mastery that transcended the conventional approaches taught by the professor. As he worked, the silent awe of his classmates grew. The air was thick with anticipation, every eye fixed on the young prodigy who was rewriting the rules. The turning point came when Barron, after meticulously solving a particularly convoluted puzzle, paused and turned to the class. In that brief, weighty silence, he explained his approach, an elegant synthesis of logic and creativity that not only solved the problem, but also illuminated a new way of thinking about it. His explanation was not boastful, but measured and sincere, inviting his peers to appreciate the beauty of thinking beyond established limits. It was a quiet manifesto on the power of authenticity, a declaration that true brilliance is not confined by tradition, but is nurtured by the courage to innovate. Professor Kingsley, watching this transformation unfold, felt the tide of authority slip further from his grasp. His eyes, once so sharp with superiority, now betrayed a mixture of reluctant admiration and simmering insecurity. In that moment, the classroom became more than a battleground for intellectual contests. It evolved into a crucible for ideas, where the weight of tradition was being questioned by the force of new perspectives. Yet Kingsley was not ready to relinquish control without a final push. With his voice steady yet laced with a subtle challenge, he stepped forward and declared, "Intellect is not merely the ability to solve puzzles. It is the capacity to withstand pressure and maintain clarity under fire. You have shown remarkable skill, Barron, but now I ask, can you remain composed when the pressure mounts beyond measure? Can you hold true to your ideas when every second is a test of your resolve?" The classroom fell into an expectant hush as Barron met the professor's challenge with a serene nod. The next task was announced, a rapid-fire session of mental trials where every second counted. The ticking clock on the wall seemed to pulse in sync with the beating hearts of every student, each one aware that this was the final measure of Barron's medal. Every participant, from the skeptical to the hopeful, sensed that this was the defining moment of the day. Barron's hands moved with unerring precision. As each problem was hurled his way, a barrage of logical riddles, abstract equations, and pressure cooker scenarios, he responded with the same unwavering focus that had characterized his earlier triumphs. His ability to remain composed under the relentless onslaught was a testament not only to his intellectual strength, but to a deeper inner resolve. With every challenge overcome, the old order of the classroom shifted further. No longer was the space dominated by the professor's imperious expectations. It now vibrated with the quiet power of individual authenticity and unyielding determination. When the final challenge was met with a flawless solution, the atmosphere in the room changed irrevocably. The whispers of disbelief and the awestruck glances exchanged among the students signaled a profound transformation. The battle was not merely won by solving a series of problems. It was a victory of spirit, a declaration that true authority stems not from inherited power, but from the courage to innovate and the strength to remain true to oneself under any circumstance. In that charged moment, the balance of power in the classroom had been redrawn. The once unassailable figure of Professor Kingsley now appeared vulnerable, his authority questioned not by mere academic performance, but by the boldness of a young mind that refused to be confined by convention. The seeds of change had been sown, and as the day drew to a close, every student in the room felt that a new era was on the horizon, one where merit, creativity, and authenticity could stand equal to age-old tradition. As dusk settled outside Winslow Academy's venerable walls, the echoes of the day's unprecedented events continued to reverberate through every corridor and classroom. The once impenetrable armor of Professor Kingsley's authority had been shattered by a quiet but relentless force, a force embodied in Barron Trump's extraordinary composure and innovative brilliance. What began as an intellectual duel was now evolving into a broader metamorphosis that promised to reshape not only the dynamics within that single classroom, but also the very ethos of the institution. In the wake of the rapid-fire challenges, a palpable shift had occurred. The students, who had long been subdued by the professor's imperious demands, now buzzed with a collective sense of possibility. Their eyes shone with newfound determination, and hushed conversations brimmed with ideas of reimagining the way learning was to be experienced. In the midst of this transformative energy, Barron's steady performance had become a beacon, a silent clarion call for innovation and self-reliance that defied convention. For Professor Kingsley, the day's events were both humbling and unsettling. In his private moments after class, as he sat alone amid stacks of academic papers and textbooks, he found himself wrestling with a profound internal conflict. The unyielding certainty he had once felt in his own methods and teachings now gave way to introspection. His identity, so long anchored in the belief that knowledge was synonymous with rigid authority, was being irrevocably challenged. There was an unmistakable tremor in his voice when he later addressed the faculty, a subtle admission that perhaps the landscape of education demanded a more fluid, inclusive approach. Meanwhile, the impact of the day's intellectual battles began to ripple outward. In the hallways, in the quiet corners of the library, and even in the bustling cafeteria, conversations centered not solely on grades or test scores, but on the deeper questions of merit, innovation, and self-worth. Students who had once been silent witnesses to the professor's commands now found themselves inspired to ask questions, to seek new solutions, and to express opinions that had long been stifled by an environment of unchallenged authority. Barron himself remained the picture of humility. Despite the accolades and the wide-eyed admiration of his peers, he continued to work quietly, often retreating into the sanctuary of the library with a book in hand or a notebook filled with fresh ideas. His triumph was not a cry for personal glory, but a subtle invitation to all around him to redefine success on their own terms. His actions, both in the classroom and beyond, sparked an unspoken revolution, one where the merit of one's ideas and the courage to think differently began to outweigh the influence of pedigree and tradition. As the days turned into weeks, the shift in the Academy's culture grew more pronounced. Student-led study groups flourished, and spirited debates filled the halls. Faculty members, inspired by the unmistakable signs of progress, started experimenting with collaborative teaching methods. Some even sought counsel from Barron, eager to learn from the young mind that had so effortlessly redefined the parameters of excellence. In this climate of intellectual curiosity and mutual respect, the Academy began to shed the vestiges of old hierarchies, embracing instead a community of learners where every voice was valued. Yet amid this vibrant transformation, the relationship between Professor Kingsley and Barron remained a poignant reminder of the complexities inherent in change. Their encounters, once charged with tension and competition, gradually took on a new tone, a respectful dialogue where challenge met reflection and traditional authority was met with innovative insight. In one particularly memorable instance, Kingsley invited Barron to join him in a faculty discussion on modernizing the curriculum. The collaboration, though initially met with skepticism by some veteran educators, turned out to be a testament to the power of bridging generations through mutual learning. Together, they explored ways to integrate creative problem solving and critical thinking into a framework that respected both historical knowledge and modern innovation. The transformation at Winslow Academy, ignited by a single day of daring challenges and quiet victories, soon became a model for change in educational circles far beyond its ivy-clad walls. Teachers from other schools, intrigued by the story of the young prodigy who had dared to defy convention, began to revisit their own methodologies. Educational reformists cited Winslow as a living example of how nurturing genuine curiosity and embracing diverse approaches could elevate the learning experience for everyone involved. In this evolving landscape, the legacy of that fateful day was clear. True change is not imposed from above, but nurtured from within. Barron Trump's journey was emblematic of a broader truth, that the essence of education lies in its ability to empower individuals to think independently, to challenge outdated paradigms, and to forge paths that are uniquely their own. His quiet determination and unwavering authenticity had not only redefined his own worth, but had also inspired an entire community to question, innovate, and grow. And so, as the Academy settled into a new rhythm of collaboration and inquiry, every member of the community, student, teacher, and administrator alike, found themselves part of a transformative narrative, a narrative where every challenge was an opportunity, every question a stepping stone, and every voice, no matter how quiet, carried the power to reshape the world. As the final light of day filtered through the ancient windows of Winslow Academy, a profound calm settled over the halls, a calm that spoke of transformation, renewal, and the enduring power of genuine intellect. The echoes of that singular historic day still resonated in every corner, a testament to the seismic shift that had redefined the very fabric of the institution. In the days that followed, the once impenetrable aura of Professor Kingsley gave way to a newfound humility. No longer did his gaze carry the cold assurance assurance of an invincible authority. Instead, it revealed a mind awakened to the beauty of learning as a shared journey. His encounters with Barron Trump had become the crucible in which his old beliefs were melted away, replaced by a readiness to embrace the unexpected and the innovative. In quiet moments of reflection, Kingsley began to see that his purpose as an educator was not to impose his will, but to ignite the flames of curiosity in every student, a revelation that reshaped not only his teaching, but his very identity. Barron, whose steadfast brilliance had sparked this transformation, remained an unassuming force in the midst of change. His journey had never been about basking in personal glory. Rather, it was a silent call to arms for every student who had ever felt marginalized by a system that valued pedigree over potential. His actions had shown that true merit was a quiet, resilient force, one that could break through the barriers of convention and usher in a new era of inquiry and innovation. The legacy of that fateful day extended far beyond the confines of a single classroom. It permeated every discussion in the cafeteria, every collaborative project in the library, and every reformist idea that began to circulate among the faculty. Winslow Academy, once a bastion of rigid tradition, was now emerging as a vibrant community where ideas flowed freely and every voice was cherished. Teachers from neighboring schools visited in search of inspiration, eager to understand how the delicate balance of respect and challenge had led to such an extraordinary awakening. In one final symbolic moment that captured the essence of this revolution, the Academy organized an assembly to honor the spirit of transformation. Here, amidst a sea of reflective faces and hopeful hearts, the story of Barron Trump's silent defiance and Professor Kingsley's humbling metamorphosis was recounted as a modern parable of courage, intellect, and the power of change. The assembly was not a celebration of an individual triumph, but a tribute to the idea that every challenge, every question, and every act of defiance against outdated norms had the potential to spark a broader renaissance. As the event drew to a close, a quiet promise hung in the air, a promise that the lessons learned on that remarkable day would continue to guide not only Winslow Academy, but also every learner who dared to question, innovate, and redefine their own destiny. The transformation was now woven into the institution's legacy, a living reminder that true education is not measured by the dominance of authority, but by the courage to listen, learn, and evolve. In the final analysis, the remarkable journey of Barron Trump and the humbled Professor Kingsley became more than a tale of intellectual rivalry. It emerged as an enduring symbol of the transformative power of knowledge, the importance of humility in leadership, and the timeless truth that every individual holds within them the potential to change the world. Their story remains an invitation to all, to challenge convention, to seek truth relentlessly, and to remember that the greatest victories are those that elevate not just one person, but an entire community. And so, as the sun set on Winslow Academy that day, it illuminated a future brimming with promise, a future where intellect, courage, and authenticity would forever be the guiding stars of a new academic dawn. If you enjoyed this story, there's another video on screen right now. Go ahead and give it a look for an even more astonishing stories. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, that way you'll never miss our newest uploads.